Hello. Hey, Sarah. I am so excited for you to be here. Hey, everyone. Hey, Jess. Hey, Steph. Hello. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is my favorite day. We're going to be talking about the nervous system and how it contributes to your, how it contributes to your ability or inability to connect in all relationships. Not just romantic relationships, but like social connection. If you feel like this past couple of years with the pandemic, you've noticed that you're more isolated or disconnected from people, there's a reason why, other than being told 8 million times that touching another person is going to cause you to be sick. Your nervous system learned how to become extra sensitive to environmental stimuli because you also learned that communicating, connecting with other people is unsafe. So if anyone knows anything about the nervous system, I would love for you to just add your wisdom into the chat. I love to kind of gauge where you're at in terms of your understanding, but I'm going to take you on a journey because I haven't figured out how to do presenter mode on live. So I'm just going to show you my computer screen. So this picture is kind of scary. This is what you look like on the inside. So this is Harriet. Harriet donated her body to science and they dissected her nervous system. You have 47 or around 40 miles of nerves within your body, and the purpose of your nervous system is to keep you safe and alive. All of these little nerves, their job is to be a sensor to your external stimuli. And what they do, let me turn this back so you stop looking at a scary photo. What they do is they give you information. So anything that you take in from your senses, it travels up your spinal cord into your brain, and your brain processes if it's threatening or not. So Harriet, these nerves that are present within you and Harriet right there, that is your alarm system, and it never turns off. It's always on for you, which is a good and a bad thing. It's good because this is how you stay alive, and it's bad because if it's in overdrive, it will be super hypersensitive to environmental stimuli. We know this because we look at animals and how they respond to their environment. So when an animal feels threatened, the nervous system helps them to be able to respond. So that is what initiates your fight or flight response. Is anyone familiar with the fight or flight response? What is the way that you respond to stress? Are you somebody who seeks conflict to protect yourself? Are you somebody who runs away? Or are you somebody who feels very shut down? You just immediately collapse. Those are 3 different ways that your nervous system learn how to respond to stress. Here's another photo of the nervous system just because it's really freaking wild. But this is you. This is your state of consciousness. So all of those nerves, they calculate, they get information from your external environment. They send it up this is your spinal cord. So these are like little fingers, and they get stimuli from the external environment. They send it up through the spinal cord, and then it goes to your brain there for processing. So I don't want to freak you out, but that's what you look like on the inside. That is important. That's how I wanted to start this the day 2, because the nervous system is everything. It is what keeps you connected to others. It's what keeps you safe. It's what keeps you alive in the world. So if anyone that is joining knows anything about the nervous system, I'd love for you to just throw some advice, throw some wisdom that you already know into the comments. But the reason why it's so important in terms of your relationship is because basically what happens, you have something that occurs during the day that causes the stress response. So that initiates your fight or flight response. And when those stimuli happen so often, maybe you wake up in the morning and you're like, I already know that I have so many things to do during the day. That initiates that fight or flight, that stress response. And then you don't give yourself the allotted amount of time to come back down into the parasympathetic nervous system state. So your parasympathetic nervous system state is where you can really experience rest, digest, and connection. then you're constantly being just bombarded by stimuli that causes the stress response to be to perpetuate and to be exacerbated by the various amounts of stressors that we experience in daily life. Before this modern civilization, before the modern jungle that we live in, we actually did live in a jungle, right? There was animals that would attack us or villages that would attack us. So your nervous system would respond accordingly to that threat, and then it would be able to come back down to homeostasis. But our modern jungle is so much more threatening because not only do you have the potential of an external, somebody hurting you physically, you see all the time in the news, all these different things that happen, but there's so many psychological threats that happen. So you're super hyper vigilant to all the potential threats that exist in your daily life. And that not only is bad because it's not a fun place to be, but it also causes a biochemical change within your body that can cause you to become ill. So my specialty is working with the nervous system and helping you to achieve nervous system regulation, because once you do that, everything else balances out. So if you're dealing with gut issues, brain fog, chronic fatigue, low libido, disconnection, respiratory issues, digestion issues, not a lot of times, I'm not going to say all the time because I know there's going to be people out there that disagree, but it is heavily influenced by your nervous system. And if your nervous system is dysregulated, you know that your body is dysregulated. And when your body is dysregulated, all of the systems that are supposed to be working together actually start to break down. And now they're just worried about survival. Another thing I want to say is that when you have the stress response, when it's activated, you have chemicals called adrenaline and cortisol that are flooding your system. Adrenaline helps you to initiate a response, so it's not always a bad thing when your stress response is activated. It causes you to take action. It causes you to change something about your environment so that you can feel safe. But cortisol, when cortisol is released in your body, it lasts for multiple hours. So you have something happen, cortisol is released, and then it stays in your body for multiple hours. So there's like a lag time. So there's that lag time, and then maybe something else happens in between that lag time where the cortisol is all the way flushed out. Maybe you get out of bed, you notice that you have so much to do during the day, that stress response happens, and then something else happens shortly after that, and that stress response is activated again. It becomes like battery acid in your body. So this is how those systems start to break down, is the perpetuation of those chemicals actually it's like battery acid. It breaks down and it causes a biochemical change within you. Now I want to show you just a picture, another model of what's happening in your nervous system. A lot of people find this helpful to see, but taking you on a journey again. All right, so this image, let me know if you can see it. And also this workbook is available to whoever's watching. You can go to my link and you can just download this workbook. So as I'm talking about things and you want to see it for yourself, you just can sign up and you'll have a free workbook download. It's 20 pages and has so much good information in it. So this is your nervous system and how it responds to threats. So when we're in this green zone, this is when you feel like you want to connect with people. You want to be social. You feel safe. You feel oriented to the environment. You are joyous in the present moment, grounded, curious, compassionate, mindful. How many of you exist in those states or are able to exist in those states? I know a lot of the private clients that I have, they're like, what? They laugh when I say in the present moment or joyous. They're like, I don't ever get into that state unless I'm drinking or unless I'm doing some sort of altered consciousness state so that I can relax. Most people actually exist in this red/orange zone, this fight or flight zone. And this little squiggly line represents the activation of that survival mode stress response. So most people actually exist in this zone. They are worried and concerned, anxious, fearful, panicked, frustrated, irritated, angered, raged. And when you are in this state, like most people are, you are not able to connect with people. So this is huge, because if you're having disconnection in your relationship, but you also identify with being in one of these states for, the majority of the day, no wonder why you're not connected in your relationship or your relationships in general. And then when we get to this blue phase here, this stands for you're overwhelmed or you shut down. How many of you identify with being dissociated or numb or depressed or helpless, or you have low energy or shame, shutdown, hopelessness, preparing for death, trapped? I could do a whole series on this photo because this is all about the trauma response and how you can get stuck in phases of trauma once you hit this phase up here when you shut down. This is why emotional expression is so important, because when you are suppressing how you feel, you are also putting yourself in a state of shutdown. And when you're in a state of shutdown, sorry, just putting my phone back up here. When you're in a state of shutdown, there's really not much that you can do. Not only do you not want to connect with your partner, you don't really have any sort of desire to live, which is like, that is a red flag for me. That is like, hey, if you're ever feeling like that, my door is always open for you to talk to me about something that you're going through, because when you do feel overwhelmed and you're not sure where to go, I know it's like, here, I'm throwing you a life raft, just somebody to talk to, somebody to get the stuff that you need to say out. I'm totally here for that. But as far as, that was a lot of information. Does anyone have questions on the nervous system? Basically, it's like a dimmer switch. You know, like when you're turning on the light and you can turn it all the way up. That's when you're hyper aroused and you know, like, you got to fight, you got to run away, you got to do something because you are so, like, you feel so threatened that you need to do something. And then you can turn down the dimmer switch by learning about the parasympathetic nervous system activation and how you can regulate your nervous system. And that helps you to enter a state of rest and digest, but your nervous system never turns off. So it's like always ready to go. And one thing that I want to state is that it's not bad if you're hyper aroused. It's not bad if you have a dysregulated nervous system. We can reframe that to say your nervous system loves you so much that it's protecting you at all times. But we have to reframe your relationship with the threats that you're experiencing in your external world, because most likely they're not threatening to your immediate survival. They're just there to represent some pieces that you haven't looked at as far as self-development or self-healing. How is this relevant to your relationship? So in your relationship, your spouse or partner or your friends or strangers or whoever can become those sources of psychological threats in your reality. So the more that you experience turmoil in your relationships, and you might not have the tools to be able to navigate what it is you're experiencing with this person, they become a trigger for your sympathetic nervous system. So maybe they walk in the room and you see their face, and there's so many things that happened in the past couple of days that you haven't moved through or you haven't worked through, that now just seeing their face makes you enter a state of fight or flight. Has anyone experienced that? Like somebody just it could be a coworker, it doesn't even just have to be in your relationships, although that is what this workshop's about, right? Like your spouse forgets to clean up their underwear off the floor, or they didn't put the dishes away, or they did something that just made you so irritated because you were also so stressed from the day, and then this happens and you're like, God, you are activated in your your sympathetic nervous system response. And prolonged periods of sympathetic nervous system arousal are not only not fun to experience, but they're detrimental to your health. A little background story, I worked in the hospital system for 5 years, and the people who are very, very, very sick also experienced and described a lot of prolonged periods of sadness and anxiety and depression that led to secondary conditions like stroke or heart attack. And I'm telling you this because there's a lot of science that supports that theory. Epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology, they study your thoughts, your repetitive thoughts, especially when they're charged by an emotion, create a biochemical change within your body, and then that prolonged sympathetic nervous system response breaks down your body systems. So your immune system declines, your ability to digest food, your digestion, like if you're having digestion issues, which so many people are, your nervous system is the first place that you should start. The thoughts that you think, the health of your relationship. So not only are you listening to really good information to help you change the dynamic within your relationship, but you're also saving your life by hearing this. I can recommend a couple of books at the end of this that are a good place to start if you're interested in understanding, like, oh, I don't want that to be me. Actually, I'll put them in here. Biology of Belief, Molecule of Emotion. So those are some good books. I would highly suggest writing them down. Think or Sync. Great places to start if you are like, oh, I'm interested in what she's saying, but I also want to know more. Those are good places to start. There's also a really good podcast. It's called Rewired, the podcast. I hope you're writing these down. Again, if you need the workbook, as we're talking through this stuff and you want to take notes, there's a link in my bio. That way you can follow along with the stuff that I'm saying. So, any questions so far on the nervous system? This is a really, really good episode. I highly suggest watching it with your spouse or partner or your family or friends. Like, your nervous system, the way that you feel about somebody is going to activate that sympathetic nervous system response. And then what happens when your nervous system is activated? Like, what happens when you're in the stress response? You start to breathe more heavy, right? Your heart starts to race. You might feel really tense. You also develop tunnel vision. So what you were able to see before, like a lot of options, now gets shrunken and you're focused on that one thing that person did. Does anyone resonate with that? Like, my friend did this one thing, and it doesn't even matter all the good things that they've done before in the past. They did this one thing, and I'm so hyper focused on that one thing that now they become the source of all of my anger and rage. This happens so much with people's spouses. And my work is all about creating healthier and happier and more peaceful home environments, because the world is hard enough. You shouldn't come home to a battlefield. You should come home and feel like you can rest and digest in your own home, in your own safe space where you are seeking connection versus being like, God, just another worry that I have. So that is the nervous system. That is how your spouse becomes a trigger for you. There's a lot of work that I do with private clients to understand where that specific trigger is coming from, because oftentimes your spouse is just representing a bigger issue. They're representing maybe you not feeling worthy, or you feeling like, I am so stressed, and then they just do one thing and then it tips you over the edge. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with what you're experiencing in your internal self. We spend so much time outside of our body, focused on somebody else to fix our issues or somebody else to make ourselves feel better. And the only sustainable way to change how you feel is to do inner work, to understand your triggers, to understand the core wounds that you still carry that are affecting and influencing your ability to connect with people in general. Because again, they will always just be reflecting something about yourself that you don't want to look at or you can't see. Life is a freaking amazing teacher. I'm just throwing you, thanks girl. I'm just throwing you a bunch of knowledge right now, but life is your teacher. Everything that happens for you, and I truly believe that everyone is always representing something for you. Don't get stuck in the granularity and the specifics of what that person did. Can you zoom out? Like, how can I summarize this person's behavior and witness it as something that I've done in the past or I'm still doing now? Right? I had a really amazing session with a client. I'm going to just pull what he said. He was talking about his son and how his son, he plays sports and he wants him to try harder. He knows that he has the talent, but he's not putting in the work to be able to show up like his dad thought that maybe he should. And I was like, do you recognize that in yourself? And he was like, yeah. He knows that he can do something, but he's not putting in the effort to get it done. So if you can utilize that example to see your reflection in the person that you are like feeling a certain way about, then life becomes your teacher. You don't need a therapist then, right? Because every single thing becomes something that you are looking at yourself in somebody else, something else. It doesn't even have to just be the person. It could be an experience that you're having. What is this representing about myself that I need to accept and integrate so that I'm not triggered, so that it's not something that my nervous system says, beep, 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 beep. That's unsafe. We don't like that. And then you send yourself into this spiral and your health declines because one thing somebody did. Okay, so enough information and education for today. I'm going to give you an exercise that you can utilize with your spouse. Number one exercise is to have them watch this just so that they're on the same page with you and have the same language of understanding how your nervous system responds to threats in your environment. Number two is called the connection exercise, and I give this to everyone that is in a relationship. So you're going to sit facing each other. You can sit in chairs. You can sit on the floor if you don't have bad knees or bad back. But you can sit on the bed. Just face each other so that your knees are literally facing each other. Your eyes are looking at each other's eyes. Sitting facing each other. Set a timer for 5 minutes. That's it. That's all you have to do. 5 minutes. And then you're going to look in each other's eyes. You're going to look in each other's eyes. This might make you laugh. You might be like, this weird person on Instagram told me to do this and it's so weird and uncomfortable. Good. It should be uncomfortable the first time that you do it. Like, when's the last time you actually looked in your partner's eyes and they looked in yours? It can make people cry. The first time I did this, I cried. Jeez, I just was like, I don't want to be seen. That was my wounding. I'm like, I don't want you to actually see me because then you might see how imperfect I am. So this might be something that allows that emotional expression, right? Like sadness, anger. Maybe you want to jump in their lap and like be hugged. Yeah, it's a really, thank you. It's a really good exercise. And it's also the beginning of Tantra. So if you know anything about Tantra, that's an advanced sexual connection philosophy. Something that I help take people through in advanced courses, but this is the beginning of that. So Tantra is all about being present. So you're carving out time to not just immediately engage in sex and get those needs met just for the benefit of getting those needs met. You're sitting with your partner or loved one, and you don't necessarily have to do this with someone you're in a relationship with. It's like a friend. You just sit with your friend, and you might cry because looking into somebody else's eyes is extremely intimate. You might laugh. You might do something crazy. You might want to hug. But just for tonight, until tomorrow's day 3. You are just going to introduce this activity with your spouse, and I would love to hear if you did it. If you would message me or comment on one of my posts, I just would love to hear if you did this. I highly recommend doing this every day or at least every week as a check-in, an intimate check-in. I've had people who are on the brink of divorce sit and do this exercise. They're like, we set a timer for 5 minutes. We ended up talking for 2.5 hours about all the things we haven't said to each other, and we were able to like clear a lot of stuff out. Yes, that is the goal. So number one, have your spouse either watch this video or rewatch it yourself and just write down some key points of, so when your nervous system's activated, you actually don't seek connection. And in my experience, I'm overwhelmed. So I can't seek connection if I'm feeling this way. It just opens up a bigger dialogue of what you're experiencing. So then you have the language to be able to express it to your partner. And then number 2 is the connection exercise. If you need guidance on how the heck to do this exercise, there's a link in the bio. And when you sign up for the link, it's just going to immediately download this workbook for you. It's 20 pages of information. And then you'll also get the replay for this video. So I hope you enjoyed this information. It's my most favorite thing to talk about. If you have questions, please reach out. I love having dialogues about this, and I will see you tomorrow.